I generally follow a rule of thumb that don't spend more than 5% of your vehicle value on mods. Now, sure, you can spend 10%. I would never go more than 10%. And that's normally not a huge deal. You know, you sit there and buy a $50,000 truck and you sit there and say, okay, that's $2,500 to $5,000 in mods. If you have a car that costs $30,000, you know, you're like $1,500 to $3,000 in mods. That's pretty much what I do with everything. So if you watch my videos on ATVs, if you watch my videos on cars, my campers, all that kind of stuff, you'll notice that I stick pretty much to that 5% rule. And that's because most of the mod money that you put in is just completely thrown away. The reason I'm bringing this up as a topic is because the Honda Navi is $1,817 new. I think it's now maybe up to $2,000 new, but you're looking at about a $2,000 bike. And when you're talking about a $2,000 bike and then you get into the mod space, if you follow the 5% rule, that means that you would be spending about, $100 in mods. So $90 to arguably $200. So when you're talking about spending, around $100 in mods, that makes it a little challenging to decide what to do. Now, I know a lot of people are going out there and spending $500 on an exhaust system and $150 on a carb, and nothing wrong with that in theory. But again, now all of a sudden you just tied up 50% of the cost of your vehicle in an exhaust system, And if you read reviews on it and people get excited about it, and they're like, yeah, I unlocked an extra 2 miles per hour with another $1,000 in modifications. And I got to laugh about that a little bit, right? So, you're better off selling this thing and going out and buying something like a Grom or buying even a bigger bike than that, if that's really your goal. Now, I love this bike. And I think this is going to appeal to a lot of different people. This bike is going to appeal to people who need something to get around in a campground. It's going to appeal to people who, want a bike but don't drive enough to justify something new or expensive or super nice. It's going to appeal to people who are newer into riding and aren't even sure if they're going to like it or not. At the end of the day, it appeals to a bunch of different groups. And I was really looking almost more for like a moped. You get electric bikes are costing $2, $3, $4 grand now. You get the mopeds, and no one really makes mopeds anymore. And if you do find them, you're paying like $1,500 for a 10-year-old moped that has 50 cc's. And so when you start thinking about that, then all of a sudden this kind of bike becomes very appealing. It's very diverse. You have fun. It's a blast to throw around. It's small, and you can have a lot of fun for the price. Now, the biggest appeal to this thing you're going to notice is that it's missing a shift lever. It's actually not. This thing's a CVT. So we're talking about a CVT motorcycle. Some people are going to call this a scooter, but it does not look like a scooter. So you get a lot of that fun feeling of a motorcycle, but with the ease of care of a scooter, right? I don't have change to oil. I don't have, gears to shift. I do like shifting gears, so I don't know if I want to say that's a positive. But at the end of the day, it just makes it very easy and very enjoyable. And if you're gonna have a small CC bike, having a CVT is actually kind of nice, right? So at the end of the day, it's easy, it's cheap. It's made by Honda. They're pretty reliable. Plenty of people are getting them 5,000, 10,000 miles without a problem. And they're fun, right? So if you're looking for something like that, you're sitting there saying, hey, I don't want to go tie up $5 grand, 10 grand in a bike. I don't want to go buy a 20-year-old used bike that's got problems. The Navi is just a real compelling package, a real compelling offer. And you can get into all the little nuances all day, but you've got to keep in mind the price point. You're talking about a $2,000 bike. $1,800 or $2,000 bike, and the minute you think about the price point, a lot of those problems go out the way. Yeah, guess what? It's got drum brakes. But the thing's tiny, the thing's light. Do you really need more than drum brakes? Serious question, right? It might be nice, but you don't need it. Guess what? The stock tires aren't best. I've heard a lot of people run out and go spend $200 on new tires, and you know what? I'm not going to go out and do that. That is 10% of the cost of this vehicle to improve the tires. Now again, if you're out there doing crazy driving, fine. These tires are fine. They're fine. They're not going to win awards, but they are fine. I have not had an issue where I felt like I was unsafe even driving in the rain, or others where I had a problem with these. Now, if I'm cornering at max speed in the rain, they're probably not going to cut it. But most of the people who are going to buy this bike aren't out there running around in the rain and going around corners super fast, right? It's not what it's designed for. All right, so I'm gonna get into some of the things and some of the things I love, some of the things I don't like, and I'm gonna get into the mods. I kind of explained a little bit about what I loved, the reason why I like it, you know, everything that's going for it, for this price, right? For this price. If I would have gone out there and said I had a, you know, $1,800 budget, even used bikes aren't great. And yet here you're talking about a brand new motorcycle for $1,800, right? And used, you're seeing these things for $1,400, $1,500, which means two things. First of all, they're holding their values. Even those that are 3 or 4 years old are selling for a couple $100 less than they cost new, which is insanity. But second of all, try to find something else comparable to this for $1,400. You can't do it. You're now into the Chinese motorcycles where you can't find parts. Now, that's one of the things that I want to start with, is talking about parts availability, because the amazing thing about this is not only are parts available from your Honda shop, but they are dirt cheap. And when I say dirt cheap, I mean things like this cowl right here is $2 for a new cowl. Parts of this bike are $3, $5, $10. It's almost unbelievable. In fact, the bike that you see here, when I bought it, was red. I was able to replace all these plastics from Honda with all brand new OEM parts for $50. All of these plastic pieces, including this grab rail back here, because the red one comes with the red grab rail. So when you think about it like that, you sit there and say, that's nuts. That means if you scrape it, if you damage it, I mean, how many people have dropped a bike? I dropped my bike once, and it cost me about $2,000 just in paint work to get that thing fixed, and I just dropped it over. And so that is really, really compelling. All right, now I'm going to get into a few pieces here now. Some of the things that I absolutely love is the storage. So where you would normally have a engine right here, you have this amazing storage compartment that's massive. I've been able to go to the store, hold most of the things I need in it right there. That's absolutely cool. And how about this, okay? You have a kick starter. That's right, okay, it has electric start. But guess what, if your battery's dead, you kickstart the thing. How cool is that when you think about having a bike that you don't ride all the time, for example, and you don't know if it's gonna start, you always have the chance to do a Kickstarter, and that's pretty cool. And on top of that, you're gonna see some people that try to modify this bike, and they take the electrical system and they run it off the 12 volt, but you're running off of AC. What does that mean, running off of AC? That means even if you take the battery out of this thing, you are still able to have headlights, taillights, and start the thing and drive it. And that is really, really cool. Again, you're getting into that whole reliability kind of concept, which is, you know, are you gonna get stranded on this bike? You're not gonna get stranded on this bike. And that to me is a very, very compelling feature. You know what else you get for a $1,800, $2,000 bike? You get a full-on stand. Think about that, an entire bike stand. That's insanity on a bike at this price. Absolute insanity in my mind. Some other things you get that I think is insanity at this price point. You get a locking fuel compartment. Yep, that's right, locking fuel compartment. That's pretty darn sweet, all right? You have all the things that you would expect. Brights, headlights, turn signals, horns. You have an e-brake. How crazy is that? You got an emergency brake. You got starters, and it does have electric start, throttle, brake, all right? So you got most of the stuff there. Now the turn signals, I will admit, the turn signals are LED. So if you do not have battery in there, the turn signals will not work. However, they look very modern and they look very nice, which is quite appealing. Some of the things that I did not know I was going to get when I bought this bike was you even have a fork lock. So I know theft is a concern people have, and you can lock the fork in a turn position, which makes it a little more difficult to steal, which is very, very appealing. And yes, if you come over here, you're going to notice you have a front pedal brake that actually engages both the front and the rear. So it's almost got a rudimentary anti-lock brake system, which is quite remarkable, okay? If I come back here, you're going to see how this works. Now you see that I have this, you have two cables on here. You have both the e-brake and then you have a rudimentary anti-lock brake system, which I find absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. You're also going to notice here another set of passenger pegs. Wow, how cool is that? This actually can sit and ride two people. That's something that is quite astonishing as well, given how cheap and small this is. Now, if I take off the seat, which is locking, I was surprised to see how much storage space I have in here. Now, this is not going to win any awards for storage space, But again, with a bike this small, and with the fact that it's got this huge storage space down here, I did not expect to also have more storage space here. Your battery is under here, and it does even come with an emergency toolkit, which is pretty incredible when you think about the price point. Now I will get into some of the modifications. So I think it's a reasonable mod on almost any vehicle that you're not driving every day to go ahead and put a charger in there, so I can just take that cable and plug it into a trickle charger to keep it trickle charged. I'm going to step down to the exhaust down here. Here's the exhaust I have, and I did do a front exhaust with the muffler back here. And I don't know how to explain this, because on paper, adding one of these exhausts to a small engine like this, 110 cc's, is not really moving the needle on any paper tests. If you watch my other videos, I mean, I have had Ferraris, I have had Jaguar F-Types, I've raced Camaros and Corvettes and Fieros, and I've done a ton of mods to get a few extra seconds out of my runs. I don't know how to explain that this cheap exhaust system feels both more responsive and I'm getting better top speeds. And again, it does not make sense. I don't know if my old one was restricted. I don't know if a mouse decided to build a nest in it at the dealership, because on paper these things don't put out anything real notable, but I am telling you with complete confidence that it feels faster. And not only feels faster, I'm having to check my speed a little bit more, because normally with the top speed of this, which I'll get into a minute, you don't have to, you just don't even have to pay attention to the speedometer because you can't speed. Now all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going 42, I'm going 44, I'm going 45 miles an hour. I got to watch it, right? So I have to say that was pretty cool. And then I added these mirror extenders and mirror risers. For those who know me, I'm about 300 pounds and 6'9". Used to be 6'9", a little bit 6'8" now. And so I'm a pretty big and tall rider, so that's helpful to get those mirrors spaced out a little further. So from a modification standpoint, I added this little piece. Actually, there's two pieces here. I added this piece right here. That piece is helps keep the metal kickstand from sinking into the blacktop, which is very nice, because anyone who's driven bikes for a long time on a hot day know that sinks. That's a good use of $1.50. And then one other change because of my height is I did put it's about a 2-inch lift or 1.5-inch lift there. So you can see a little bit that black piece right there, right on the suspension piece. That lifts this back of the suspension up an extra 2 inches and gives me a really good, comfortable ride height. So some other things that you are going to need to know if you own one of these vehicles is it does have a place to stash your helmets. In theory, I was really excited about this because that's a concern that I always have when I'm riding and I stop somewhere. I want to be able to lock up my helmet, and I honestly cannot figure out how to use these. So that sounds silly, but it's too far away for me to actually hook my buckle to it. So the only thing I found out to do is strap my helmet and then hook the strap on here. The problem though is then somebody could steal it if they want to. So it hasn't been an issue yet, but I wish this was further out, like almost right over here, so that I was able to hook onto that and then leave my helmet on the side and not worry about that being stolen. Another thing that I'm not a big fan of here is the foot pegs. They do not bend. So I would like those flex up, even when you're just like walking around in the garage and stuff like that. It's a nice feature to have. It's important to note that these things are actually carbureted. Yep, you heard that right. These are carbureted, so they do have a choke. And the idea that there's a carbureted car in 2025 is quite astonishing. But at the same time, at this price point, you know, what do you expect? I've heard some people say, hey, go add fuel injection and add, you know, a couple $100 to the price. And I don't know. I said, when you're talking about $1,800, I would like fuel injection. But if you go add $500 to the price, and you might think, oh my gosh, it would not cost $500 to do fuel injection. But now you're talking about 12-volt system. You're talking about computers. You're adding a lot to this, right? And you almost lose that appeal. You also do then, because it's carbureted, then you do have to worry about the fuel petcock here, and you have to turn it off, and then it does have a reserve, and then it has on. Now, I was actually really interested to find that it has a reserve, because to be completely honest, it still has a fuel gauge. So you have a fuel gauge here, and yet it also has a reserve. What does that mean? I don't know. So I had to use it once, and that was more of, I just didn't realize that I used up a tank of gas. This thing keeps like I think it's less than a gallon of gas. And that's one of those weird things. I wish it held a little bit more gas. It gets really good fuel economy. I think they say 100 miles per gallon, but you just don't. I think they say 110, but people are saying that it gets about 100, maybe 90 miles per gallon. But you have a fuel gauge up there. I wish it held a little bit more, but it is kind of nice to have that reserve tank there if you end up needing it. I think the mirrors and stuff like that are actually quality. I know that sounds weird. When you're talking about a price point, if you've ever bought like a Chinese bike at this price, and you know, a lot of the Chinese bikes, like the mirrors don't fit right, and the pieces don't fit right, and it's just not well built. And that is not the case here. This thing is built with Honda quality, and I'm not just saying that. You know, this thing is actually really well built. The parts are really well built. It's well engineered. I'm all around astonished after owning this thing that they're able to sell this thing for $2,000. I mentioned a moment ago how easy it is to maintain and repair. So repair is super easy. All these panels, you know, you can just unscrew them. This back piece, I mean, almost every piece of this becomes very easy to repair, with one exception, and that's actually the engine, which is astonishing because many of you may have spent the life like I did, where you you know, repaired Honda engines in your garage with pretty much a spork. These are a little trickier. So if you find these with a blow motor, they're almost useless because you can't get replacement motors for them. I found a lot of quality rebuild kits on it, and I actually looked at a couple of them. Now, most people who are having blown motors, it looks like that it's, you know, there's no, I can't tell you exactly what's causing it. I don't think there's a blown motor crisis on these things. There's a few of them. It looks like, for the most part, there are people that are getting several thousand miles, say for them 3,000 or 4,000 miles, without changing the oils or maintaining anything. And that is one of the things that's true of any car. I think that when you think about your car getting 3,000 to 6,000 miles per oil change, and here, I think you've got to look at it as 1,000, right? You don't want to go over 1,000 without oil change. Now, the good news is it's very easy to check your oil. You just come right here, and you've got this plastic piece right here. It's massive, right? You can twist this like this, and then pull it out, and there you can check your oil level on the dipstick. So it's super, super easy to do, right? So keep your eyes on that oil, and then go change the oil. You're also supposed to change the spark plug. The one complaint I do have about this is the spark plug is a little too challenging to replace. So it is not a deal breaker, but when I think about how easy this is to change the oil, all I got to do is take out the oil cap, and then, you know, drain the oil, and then put oil in. There's no oil filter. There's a screen. All that makes it super easy. And then to change the spark plug, which you're supposed to do, I think, every year or two, you have to take this entire panel out. You have to go inside of here, take that apart, all these plastics off, just to go in and change the spark plug. And that's just not an ideal design. I think if I was Honda, you don't have to change the motor. I think I would make it a little bit easier to access that area down there without taking all the plastics off to do spark plug. But anyway, it's not the end of the world. I get that you've got some trade-offs, but it is worth pointing that out. Outside of that, though, maintenance is super cheap or easy. You know, you're talking about less than a quart of oil, and you don't even have an oil filter. So you're literally talking about annual maintenance costs of like $3. Okay, or if you use the quality oils, I use the Honda oils now, you know, you're talking about like $7. So think about it, $7 annual maintenance fee, very reliable, $2,000 initial purchase price. If you want to drive a motorcycle and you're concerned about the costs and the reliability issues, then this becomes a no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer. Now, one other modification I did forget to mention is when I replaced the oil, because there's no oil filter in here, I did put a magnetic oil drain plug on there. So down here, you have the drain plug. If you see it right there. I did replace the factory one with one that's got a magnetic tip to catch any metals that's inside there and the oil. And that was only a couple bucks. So at the end of the day, I met the 5% rule here. So I was able to do all these modifications, keeping it under 5% of the purchase price, under $90, which is pretty cool. Now, if you do the math, you're gonna say, hey, you spent more because you bought the plastics, but I honestly was able to just take the old plastics, sell them on Facebook Marketplace, and get pretty much 100% of what I spent back in the plastics. So now we're only talking about those other modifications that add up to that price. I did keep the factory exhaust because I've heard people having issues with some of the exhaust systems. As weird as it sounds, some of these cheaper exhausts seem to have less problems than the higher end exhausts. So some of the ones that people are spending hundreds of dollars for are cracking headers and stuff like that, which is kind of a bummer. So keep your eyes and do your reviews before you buy one of those. That has not really been an issue with the cheaper ones like this one here. So that's worth pointing out. Now, front suspension, not a huge travel, but it's generally okay. Rear suspension is a little firm, but generally it does okay. I haven't had any problems with the suspension. The top speed is the only thing I wish was a little higher, but I knew it going in. So top speed of this thing, I don't even want to say what they say it is. I generally, on flat ground, I'm getting a little over 40. Now, mind you, I am a pretty big guy. I'm 300 pounds. So I'm getting around 42, maybe 44. That's about max I'm getting on flat ground. Going up a steep hill, I'm sitting at 30, you know. So I got to watch that a little bit, get a little bit of speed going into those hills. But again, when I was comparing this to a moped, you know, mopeds typically have a top speed of about 30 anyway, and you're going up a hill at 12. So from that standpoint, if you're talking about 25 mile per hour, 35 mile per hour straights, occasionally getting a 45, you're going to feel okay on this. You're not going to love driving long distance at 45 mile per hour straights because you're going to be going a little slow at like 44. But generally, you're good on the 25 and 35. You got plenty of torque on the lower end to go up the steep hills as long as you're not going too fast, because it does have that CVT. So that's pretty much my assessment of this bike. Would I buy this again? No question about it. I normally don't keep vehicles too long, but at this price point and this depreciation rate, even if I only ride it a couple times a year, I don't see why I'd rush off and get rid of it, right? So overall, very pleased, would definitely buy again, highly recommend, as long as it does what you're looking for, right? If you're sitting there saying, this is gonna be the bike I drive every day, I'm trying to go on the highway, you can't go on the highway with this. You just need to keep those limitations in mind. If you're come from the era of mopeds and stuff like that, this thing's gonna feel like a power hungry horse, and you're gonna love it. So